Welcome back to Combat Mission Shock Force 2 for the second of our unit guides tied into the new Platoon Patrol series. To the surprise of absolutely no one, the Unconventionals proved to be the most popular choice for the next unit, but they also present a unique problem in terms of ToE. The uncons represent militia, guerrillas, insurgent, or other lightly armed, poorly equipped paramilitary combatants who are very loosely organised. The Platoon Patrol is about putting shock forces, mechanised and motorised platoons through their paces. The uncons don't even have platoons, never mind platoons integrating infantry and vehicles. I've covered this and the ins and outs of all the weapons and vehicles in a pretty comprehensive guide already, which I'll link down in the description. The challenge here is that if I want something resembling a platoon made out of uncons, I'm going to have to cobble it together myself. That brings with it some issues, not least of which is the smorgasbord of options here, from individual snipers to vehicle-borne IEDs. I could probably make a case for any kind of agglomeration of pieces I want. So I think the first thing to do is to break down exactly what our platoon needs. In simple terms, I think that translates into dismounts, transport and firepower. We need infantry to close with and destroy the enemy, vehicles to cart that infantry about, and some kind of fire support to ideally destroy the enemy at a distance, but more realistically suppress them so the infantry could do their thing. For Shock Force 2's Unconventionals, the big constraint is really the transport options. We only have access to civilian vehicles, taxis and pickups. The taxis can carry 4 passengers and the pickups can carry 9. I don't want to have to deal with an excess of vehicles here, so the taxis are probably too small to be useful. That leaves us with the pickups. They come in uncon transport groups along with the taxis, so we'll have to trim them away. When we do, we get 4 pickups. These are just civilian vehicles, no armour, no weapons, 1 driver and passengers in the back or next to them. This means that we have a maximum carrying capacity of 36 men, which is coincidentally a pretty reasonable size for a platoon. Exactly who to carry about is another question though. Unconventional infantry come in somewhat amorphous groups with a HQ team leading up to 5 infantry teams. These infantry teams are 3 to 5 men strong, principally armed with AKMs, but with options to carry RPD LMGs, SVD marksman rifles and the ubiquitous RPG-7 in various quantities depending on the team size. On top of that, we have to factor in the way the 9-man limit of the pickups restricts some combinations of different sized teams. We can't fit 2 5-man teams in 1 pickup, for example. One option here will be to make ersatz Syrian army squads. This makes sense in context, given that most of the unconventionals in our Shock Force scenario are probably actual Syrian army soldiers. Building squad equivalents out of 5-man teams with an RPG and 4-man LMG teams would give us a pretty sensible, reasonable subunit that fits in the back of a pickup. On reflection though, I think this is imposing too much order on the chaos and disorganisation that really characterises the uncons. There's another 4 Syrian army units in the platoon challenge, and they've all got basically the same Soviet-style squad organisation. Aping that with the uncons is going to make things a lot less interesting, even if it might be a good idea. So in the end, I've picked 2 large combatant groups with 5 teams each, and let the randomisation inherent in the force selector pick the bulk of the force. I've tweaked individual teams a little here and there so that each group fits into pickups, but we've got a real mix to work with. Group 1 consists of 17 men with 1 SVD, 1 RPD, 1 RPG-7 and 14 AKMs. Group 2 is 18 men strong with 2 SVDs, 2 RPDs and again the single RPG-7 plus 13 AKMs. Overall, this is a pretty poorly armed couple of mobs, but that's how they've been generated, so welcome to the uncon life. It's pretty obvious that we're going to need some more firepower. Uncons also have access to command groups, which is where most of their heavier weapons are found. We could trim one of these down to a HQ team, 2 PKM machine guns, and an extra RPG team, so they would fit in another pickup, and we could deploy them as the base of fire to support the infantry groups. Of course, if we have pickups and we have machine guns, then the only real sane course of action is to cut out the middleman and bolt them together. I think it's going to be much more interesting, characterful and arguably realistic to ditch the idea of a dismounted weapons squad in favour of some technicals. These are obviously exactly the same as the transport pickups, just with some kind of heavy weapon jury-rigged to the back and operated by some incredibly optimistic crewmen. Like the transports, they come in groups of 8 vehicles, 4 armed with PKMs, 2 with Dushka heavy machine guns, and 2 with SPG-9 recoilless rifles. The SPG-9 is a fairly specialist weapon. I don't think it really lives down at platoon level. The PKM certainly does, and I think there's probably enough Dushkas floating around Syria in a hypothetical conflict to justify using them. So I've gone for a pair of PKM technicals, one of which is the Group HQ, and a pair with Dushkas for some extra firepower. Mashing them all together gives us our Uncon platoon analogue then. 35 dismounts spread across 4 pickups, with 4 technicals backing them up. That makes for 8 small vehicles, a clear fire support element in the technicals, and a reasonably numerous but poorly armed mob for infantry work. In terms of combat missions quick battle points cost, they weigh in at a surprisingly hefty 428 points. That's actually a fair amount more than a Syrian army motor rifle platoon in BTRs, which costs 313. But we're not really getting the full story here. Our improvised Uncon platoon has 4 separate C2 chains, no radios, no body armour, no extra ammunition for the dismounts. All of their vehicles are literally unprotected, with crew and passengers vulnerable to small arms fire. The platoon in BTRs is probably a much more useful and survivable battlefield unit. So I don't think the points value is a useful indicator of combat power in this particular case. We could have a much better armed and equipped platoon analogue, but honestly things could be a lot worse as well. Overall, I think we've got a reasonable example of the kind of unit an irregular force might send out for our platoon patrol. I'll link the actual run down below when it goes live, and we'll see how they do. So, thanks for watching. If you'd like to see these videos early and support the channel, you can do so via Patreon or YouTube memberships. Whether you do or not, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.